This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, this meeting's called to order at 10:05. Roll call. Tasha Bushin. Here. Tristan Sanders. Todd Acey. Jeremiah Jackson.
Here.
Laura Ball. Here. Wendy Ball. Here. Jimmy Rajan. Okay, is there any public comment that is not already on the agenda this morning? Going once, going twice. Okay.
Definitely online.
Alrighty, so we're going to start with the town hall recap and survey results to date. Yeah, no worries, take your time.
Plug's a little finicky.
So, we put together some of the information from the survey results. Chris has a slideshow we can put up.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a bar graph that will show you what people rated them and the number of people who gave it that rating. People who scored a 1 are on the top and 5 on the bottom. You can see the counts at the bottom of how many each rating got. So the average score for Enhanced the Golf Course is a 3.2 rating.
Yeah, so just a reminder, 1 is least important, 5 is most important. So majority of people think golf course enhancing is most important. Moving on.
For encourage recreation, arts, and nature, the average score was 3.6. Again, with a large number of people giving it a 5. And then for upgrading the community clubhouse, again, that one has a high 5, an average rating of 3.6. And enhance the airport has the highest rating on a low priority for people as a 1, with an average score of 2.8. And yeah, these are just word clouds based on the comments that were submitted. I printed out copies of all the comments. I think everybody should have one up front, yes. And there's a couple extra on the table if anybody wants to read through all the comments that were submitted to the 2 questions that were on the end, which were please expand on any of the above projects with your specific ideas, and if you have any additional ideas and comments. So I wrote and graded those questions and read the comments that were submitted for all of those. There's a wide variety of comments that are on there, anything from people wishing for the community center to be upgraded to people saying they don't think we should be spending any money on this. We should be working on our infrastructure, and then there were some other new ideas presented in here as well. So I encourage everybody to take a little bit of time and read those. All I have. Oh, I guess one more thing, sorry. The other component of this was that we had put these up with stickers. And I'm not sure what happened, but unfortunately page 1 disappeared out of the office. As Lisa says, we looked everywhere for it. I don't know where it went, but I do have pages 2 through 4. If you guys want to look at these, it's kind of spread out. There's nothing that really stood out as far as I could see. You know, there's definitely interest in the green belts and beach access for sure, and clubhouse improvements or modifications.
Jessica, that first page had to do with the golf course.
Oh,
basically.
Primarily with
primarily. Yeah.
A lot of it was the golf course.
Okay.
We don't have that data. I mean, I know there's definitely green stickers on there.
Right.
How much
much was
How
added.
much is lost information, unfortunately.
But even with the information that we've received, the golf course already has a pretty high interest. And I also see in some of these that a multi-course added to that is, looks like it was favored too on the comments that I'm reading. Okay.
Okay, so who wants to go first? Does anybody have a preference on what they want to, who wants to go first, just kind of discussing these
To
results?
discuss this? Oh, I haven't soaked it up quite.
Yeah, I'm still kind of,
I'm still absorbing it, but I'm happy to see so many responses. Actually, it was my first response. Was cool. Tons of responses. The full gamut. I'm kind of excited to read them all. I'm kind of excited to see that people do want to have an awesome looking golf course down there. So of course,
Yeah.
yay, go
Yeah.
golf course. And also the nature stuff and the beach access. Those were high on my list. So good for everybody.
Any takeaway from anybody else with the town hall?
I would just say that these things I'm not surprised by, and they kind of were, like Wendy was saying, kind of on my priority list. And I think we have a better sense of where we need to start now and the hierarchy of things that can be addressed and should be addressed. So I think we can take some of these results now and maybe come up with a priority list of where we start on the strategic plan, because there is so much. Like improving beach access, golf course, maybe thinking about the clubhouse.
I agree with you that it does help us determine where the priorities are. There's some other added, like the pump track and a dog park. I don't know if that made it into this. That type of thing that will be, we'll have to discuss about adding it into the strategic plan. I think right now, what the district board it needs is to have a list for the strategic plan. Before we start trying to accomplish the goals, we need to focus on nailing down the strategic plan and then moving forward with taking action on that.
And I think also too, establishing a hierarchy of what can be done first, what's going to be the easiest, what's going to take the least amount of money, and then what we need to find funding for, and then establish a timeline.
I agree. From the district's point of view, all of that will be encompassed in the strategic plan, and definitely the sooner that we get our job done in presenting the Parks and Rec strategic plan to the RID board, the sooner we'll be able to start taking action. I know it seems like it's taking a long time, or it takes more time than some of us like to see in accomplishing certain projects, but we need to stay focused and get the strategic plan done, so then we can, the actions, the decisions that the RD board makes is following the strategic plan.
Yes, Wendy.
And I like being more confident doing what we're doing, knowing that the community has had a chance to have their input, and a lot of them gave us their input. So it makes me feel a lot more confident to do the things that we're going to do.
Absolutely. Yeah, Jerry.
Maybe a step towards, or two steps towards your goal would be to just simply reorganize this by topic. Because I went through and marked all the airport stuff because I was interested. But reorganize it by topic to see what the community is saying about those topics. And then the second idea would be, we really do need a schedule for what we want to do and when. And if doing the strategic plan input, we ought to set a date. So, otherwise it's going to be out there forever.
I agree.
And then march towards that date.
Absolutely. And so is that something that us as a board puts together, and then we,
As a committee?
as a committee, and
Yes.
then we, as a committee, and then we take that to the board?
Yes.
Okay.
I was hoping to have the draft completed by no later than the July RID meeting. However, and Tristan's not here today, but she had mentioned at the town hall of maybe perhaps doing one more town hall before we presented the strategic plan to the board. I don't know if that's necessary, but I just wanted to throw that was something that she had said. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. And I think for the next meeting that we should, like Jerry suggested, that we organize the priorities and then start working on that strategic plan.
I mean,
Shall we divide this list up? Like maybe I'll take the golf course ones and organize them. You can take the nature trail hits and organize them. You can do the airports and Tesha. Or,
Yeah, however we wanted to.
and then maybe by next week we can be able to say we have some concrete recommendations.
Well, I don't know about next week, but you mean the next
next
meeting? I think that may be doable. What do you think about that? Would that help you? I want to be helpful for staff and not get in the way. So how would you like to see us help?
I think that I can allocate morning to do that.
Just divide it. Okay.
Yes.
Have all of us.
Everybody to do it for this thing, but yes, I definitely.
We're organizing this.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, maybe a suggestion. You know, the strategic plan has what, half dozen major sections or so. One thing I would recommend is we each one of us individually will grab a section and be responsible for that. You know, like the obvious one for me would be airports.
Right.
But we would also, you could quickly organize this thing by just taking those 5 or 6 categories and get 5 or 6 highlighter colors.
Yeah.
And just go through,
That's what I was thinking.
you
not
know,
more
and then right there you could see, gee, mine are all green ones. I'll do the green ones, you know, and then factor those into the strategic plan. You know,
Yeah, and I'm thinking too, if we have everything outlined, then maybe the next meeting, what we can do is set a time frame. Like how long is this gonna take? You know, that type of thing, or at least give it an estimated time for completion, or at least to get started.
Create a schedule.
Yeah, exactly. That sounds good to everybody. Okay.
Are we responsible enough to do the highlighter method rather than put it on Maureen's desk method? Because I don't want her to hate us.
I think it's it'll probably be a little of both. I mean, I think we have our homework, we can do our highlighting methods, and then also have Maureen maybe condense this or.
Yeah, I think, I don't know what you guys would like. I think that for your own purpose, great, you want to go and do highlighter, but if you do want to present the information to the public in some more user-friendly version of it, then we can organize it. Okay. Yeah, we just told the survey yesterday, but I didn't have a lot of time spent on it.
And I would say maybe if we could get Marine's revision, then each of us can look at it, and then based on our sections, we can make comments or suggestions on what else is added or subtracted.
Does that sound to you, Jessica? Doable?
Okay, we're gonna take that head nod.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that.
Lovely, okay. All right, any public comment on this? Going once, going twice. Okay, so we're gonna go on to the second discussion item, which is community center.
Real quick, I had partially intended if anybody wanted to have any discussion too with this item about how the town hall went, or if there's any feedback for the future. I thought that maybe be good to discuss before we do the next round. Yeah. While it's fresh in your head.
Absolutely.
Does anybody have any comment about the town hall, things that went well, things we could do differently? Yeah.
Thank you for the carrot cake cupcakes. Those were delicious.
Yes, Jessica.
And Nick, you missed the, that is gluten-free berry banana bread with no dairy.
No, I thought it was great meeting. I thought it was pretty well attended for the first one. I thought everyone behaved, and I think we, had some good energy.
I think where we could use help or not help, but just do better is the advertising aspect of it. And so I think when we are advertising, like I've been starting to share the district page when you're announcing and just having that, getting it out there more frequently.
I agree. And I've also been inviting people specifically that I think would be interested that just don't know about it. And I think that's a really good idea. We started doing that with Pioneers events too, and that's been pretty successful. But yeah, I do think it does need to be advertised a bit more. But I would say I was really pleased with how many people came out. I think that was pretty inspiring. And I think the time of day worked really well. I know it's hard for everybody, but I think it was good to have that public input.
Definitely good with, I kind of disagree on, I mean, for the town hall, it seems okay, but I definitely felt rushed at the end there because people were ready to go home. And there could have been more, and we did miss, I missed a few things just because I felt rushed.
And as they grow and get larger, maybe we'll be more rule driven, but maybe
Exactly.
not 5 times at the microphone.
Well, and I also think too, we had a huge laundry list to go over in that town hall. I don't think we'll have that much in the future. So I think going forward, it can be condensed probably a lot because there was just a lot of information to go over, like a lot. Yes, Jessica.
I'm wondering if anybody has any ideas. We did, I know there could have been more promotion on Facebook or the Pioneer email perhaps, but those were avenues that were utilized as well as a flyer. But one of the comments that was provided on the survey was somebody said they had just heard about this and they didn't even know there was a Parks and Rec committee or anything that's going on. I know we put it in our newsletter as well. So I'm wondering if there's a different something that should be utilized for promotion and for this kind of stuff. You would have ideas.
And I think for the town hall, I think we could have even advertised it on KMID.
Yeah, that's a good idea. But another way you could advertise is utilizing that Scopola board.
Oh,
Yeah.
Thank you. Good one.
Thank you, Pauline. The obvious.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anything else? All right.
We have our homework. We have our highlighting homework.
Yes, we have our homework. All right, cool. So let's go to number 2, the community center.
Yeah, I can go ahead and talk about the community center. There hasn't really been any kind of formal plan just yet. There has been talk with our RID Budget Advisory Committee meetings with a couple of RID board members about basically maybe hiring an architect to redesign, rehab the current community clubhouse center building, trying to make it more modern, ADA compliant specifically, and use some of that unusable space downstairs in some way. So we really just need to kind of go back to the drawing board literally on that and see if we can do anything with that community center. So that's been talked about in the budget meeting, so we can kind of budget that kind of plan. So, yeah, other than that, general maintenance items, stressing to the crew to make sure it looks good here before the big holiday weekend. That's about it. So we want to put on here as a continuing discussion item because it is our one community center.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Tash.
So I know there is a concern that if we keep throwing money at this, that it might just be a money pit, right? But I would also, to that point, I would say that it's important for us to do what we can for this building. It's part of the district infrastructure. And in the future, if we were able to do a new community center elsewhere, maybe in that general area, I don't know, then we would still have a really well-maintained building for other district infrastructure. Like maybe perhaps even moving the office staff, admin down to that location, and then this could also be all for the fire department. I know that was in the plan at some point, and kind of that idea kind of got lost in the weeds over time. And I would kind of like to see us still maintain that building. It is part of our infrastructure. Yeah, but maybe, yeah, definitely getting at least a quote on what it would take to redesign or, and then have a list of priorities on as far as what needs to be done to make it safe. That should be the primary, that should take precedent over any of the other wishes for that space, making sure it's a safe space. And I know that the fire department does have some concerns on, especially that the lower part of the building, as far as what was done there without making sure that there wasn't anything removed on this, as far as I don't know how you say it, but making sure that everything's integral. Structure,
Yeah, it's
the integrity of it hasn't been compromised.
Mhm.
Or if it has, identify it and let's get it on our list on what we need to do to fix it.
Wendy.
I just want to ask Tesha if I heard you correctly. Did I hear you say maybe like another facility downtown?
Well, that is, and it was discussed at the town hall, and it has been something that the community has been looking at for quite a while for as a new community center. However, in the past when we've looked at it, the true cost wasn't really brought to the public, and so that's a bigger, and maybe we add it into our strategic plan for like down the road, but yet start the process now. I think it would take, for us to be able to complete a project like that, it would probably take like a bond or something like that that the community pays for. We definitely don't have the funds to complete it just with what we have right now. And so, we really need to use what we have and make sure that that's usable for now. But we are growing as a community, and we oftentimes hit capacity of what is allowed at that building at just about every event. And it has also kept, that space has also kept us from being able to grow some of our events. We used to have plein air down there, and one of the main reasons why we stopped having it is because it got too large. And so, at some point, I know that is something that the community, a portion of the community would like to see as a new community center. I personally would rather see us focus on our infrastructure, and I know that that's really should be the priority of the district. But I think that if we at some point were to pass a recreational tax, or we were able to, which we're not doing right now, or we were able to go to the community and see and vote on a bond and see where if the community actually supports that, that would show us that is something that we should be focusing on as well.
I'll be interested to read what the community says.
Yeah.
And I would just say, I saw the plans for the old community center, the whole redesign from scratch, and then I also saw an addition instead of.
You saw the trilogy.
Yes, I saw the trilogy plans, and then I also saw a hand drawing of just adding on to the existing community center, which I think would be lower cost and probably a little bit more feasible, where it wouldn't take 10, 15 years. It's something we could probably do a little bit quicker if the integrity, like you said, is there and sound, and if the existing clubhouse is savable, and we can add on to it. I think that is a better idea to try to move forward with than completely tearing it down and building something else, or building something new somewhere else. And I agree, we should be focusing on infrastructure. We have things from 1965 that need updating, but that all being said, if we set the table and plan to get this done, and we do have the funds and things are passed and things are ready, we have it ready. We have the plan, and then we can also get the community more excited about it. It's like, hey, this is what we could have and this is what we could do. And it could also bring in, extra funds for RID too. If we could actually rent that out as an event space or for weddings or, you know, for whatever it is. So those are my thoughts. Nothing? All right.
So, I think part of the reason that this is an important agenda item for this meeting is that the RAD board is discussing the budget for next year. And currently in the community center budget, there is $0. So, I think that if we feel that there's something that should be done in the next year, maybe focus on that for the moment. And so if we do wanna try to put in a budget line item in there, you know, what would that budget be for this next year?
I would say be drawing plans. And, you know, having maybe a structural engineer go to the community center and check everything out. Especially the ADA compliancy, I think is a really big deal for our community. We do have a lot of elderly people that have a hard time walking up that ramp, they trip. It is
And the
a
mold.
problem. Yeah,
And the mold.
yeah.
I have a question. I mean, there's some obvious, as far as like the leaks in the roof and stuff like that, that need to be addressed like yesterday. And so we definitely need money in the budget for that. The longer we wait, the more expensive it's getting. What are your thoughts, Chris? I mean, I'm not in on those budget meetings, so.
Yeah, I did add in some budget for architecture, engineering. It's not in the comm center improvements line item, it's a different line item, but, and there's a little bit in the facility maintenance line item, but not really that could go for any kind of parks project, so it's not really specified for community center. But we can certainly add a little bit more to that budget.
What was the quote that you got for fixing that south wall?
About 24,000, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Re-siding, new windows, yeah, all that.
And that didn't include the roof.
No. Yeah, so the roof has issues also.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to go to the public comment and see if there's any advice.
Any public comment here?
I'll let you do it. All right. Nick Pate, community member, fire chief, long-time person that's dealt with the community center in different various states. I went and retiled the floor a couple years ago so we could do our event. I've heard the same conversations about everything for over 15 years now, and we need to decide and bring in a professional, look at our options. Trilogy, when we had them do an artist rendering, that was after I don't know how many months of committee meetings, and then they went a different direction from the committee. Coming in and seeing what our available options are instead of talking about our options is going to be really important to save time and energy. We don't really have that many options of what we can do in the community center. Yeah, we can talk about how to design the siding and the paint, but the actual foundation, where it's going to be and how it's going to be, is really two options. We build one or we remodel the one we have. And in my experience of dealing with this building, which is also on the list for rebuild, we're looking at millions of dollars, 5 to 20, depending on what design we did. Just a fire station right now in California, to build a real fire station is going to be over $5 million. Than basically anything other than the steel shed that you park fire engines in. So looking at realistically what the community wants, if you look at the list you guys just got with pools and activity centers and other things and wedding venues, what energy are we going to put into a size of community center? You guys are going to be shocked by the price tag that comes out, and we need to prepare for that. And that's where I do think it's a good idea to start. One is to keep bringing professional, and two is to get those possibilities for actually financing or funding it. That was what we were missing with the last project. We got the community center got sold, we had these great renderings, and then we never got told how we were going to pay for it realistically. There were some ideas, but we never got presented them. And also too, if you guys want to look, we've got designs of pickleball courts and volleyball courts and all this other stuff that we talked about that always get to the design phase and then we never can afford it. And so they go through all this energy and all this momentum and then we can't afford it. And so looking, even a pump track's going to be a significant amount of money in just paving. It costs us almost $100,000 for the pad back here for our $70,000 pre-building. So realistically, we need all these things, but we're going to have to afford it somehow.
Good point. Thank you. Any other public comment?
So I guess my recommendation, Chris, is just making sure in these budget meetings that we are looking at getting some, like you said, getting some money and seeing what can be done. I see one public comment.
I was wondering, you mentioned 2 sets of plans. One was a hand sketch. Was that Collins?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. That would be pretty much, that design was within the envelope of what is allowed at the airport, and that was really the only viable way to add on to that building. And to add on to that building in that way, what we determined at the time at the community center committee meetings is that you were going to always have that space divided. You're never going to end up with a big space, and it was a lot of money for a little bit of overall space. And that's why or that was one of the ways that we were able to sell the idea of the new community center being a space that could meet the community's required or desires to have a learning center and a medical area, a clinic area, as well as a big, large area. Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Wendy.
I think it would be a good idea for us to really drill down what we want out of the community center to be happening. Because I might have a few opinions that are different from Jerry's, that are different from yours, and I think before we start designing it, we should figure out what it is. How large is it? What kind of shows? Like Sally wants to put on a play, thinks she should do it at a community center. Well, is that a community center or a theater? Is it a urgent care facility, or like Todd says, a laundromat? I mean, so many people have different ideas for what this community center should be. I think it should be open, number one, not closed. And then when it is open, we're bringing out tables and chairs. But we all have different visions, I guess.
Right.
So maybe drill down what we want it to be, and then decide what avenue to take.
Yeah, and I think first things first, we need to figure out what we can do and what condition it is in. So I think if we could make like a hierarchy list again, like structural engineer comes out, plans get drawn after maybe we have another, maybe that's our next town hall, is what do you want to see in the community center? That could be something that we could talk about. Like what are people's ideas? What do they want to see and want within that center? And then we can kind of
The only way we're going to make money on these things is having an open space.
Yeah.
For people.
Yeah.
A lot of
that money.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Speaking, of course, the community has grown and changed a little bit in the types of people that we have here now. But a lot of that information, we spent years gathering information from the community about what they wanted to see. We should have all of that still documented. And I know there are some basics that definitely the community wanted to see: a clinic. They wanted to be able to see performances. It was all in the same space, but in the learning center, those were the main things. I would push back on a laundromat because that's a private business.
Right there.
And so that's not really for the district. That's something somebody, if they want to build a laundromat, what the district could do is just provide like what we've done with other businesses, which is a payment plan for hookups, something like that, in my opinion. But as far as
that's a viable business for someone who wants to have a business. I mean, I didn't
and
even consider it.
and it's not for the district to take on
No.
public
But I
business.
get that.
Or
But is it a play school? Is it a yoga studio? Is it a food? I mean, then
It's all of the above.
maybe then you're right. Maybe there's more of a campus downtown.
I think it just needs to be kind of all encompassing, where it can transform or evolve into different things that people want to do. Like maybe we put in a stage, I mean, there's so many ideas, right? But I think first things first, just figure out if we can do anything.
Well, I think that has been looked at, but we need to maybe revisit what we can do at I think there's two different topics. There's one, can we use the community center and expand it, and it provide and meet the basic needs of what the community wants? In my opinion, and over the years of all the information that we've gathered over the years, it probably does not fit the community. We're going to need a new community center at some point. So, but we can't do the new community center all at once or within the next few years. So prioritizing at least getting our existing building up to par so that we can still maintain some function, have functions, and upgrade it as much as we can. And at the same time, doing public outreach and maybe working on, like I said before, working on getting the community sold on a bond or something like that in which to pay for a brand new facility that would meet all of what the community wants. Again, a lot of this has been gone over, and we've spent, even though some of us are new to the community, we really have, as a community, we've spent a lot of energy, and it would like to be nice to see the energy that we have put into this come to fruition. I know that it can be frustrating as a public community member to listen to us just talk and talk and talk and not accomplish it. I understand how frustrating that is. I feel the reason why it hasn't been accomplished is because the upfront costs haven't been presented to the public, because I believe that we were afraid that it would scare people away from the idea of doing it. And but I think if we're just upfront, this is what it's going to cost. Back then, we were looking at a $3 to $4 million project. The plans that got submitted was really more like an $8 to $10 million project. And that's where people were like, wait a minute, we didn't sign up for that. So now course costs have increased. And so we'd probably, on the low end of things, we'd probably be looking at, I would say, an $8 to $10 million on the low end project. So, but just being honest with the community about what it's going to take. And then if we did put it up for a bond or something like that, and if it passed, great. That shows that that's what the community wants and is willing to pay for it outside of the infrastructure taxes or the infrastructure money that we need to upgrade our aging infrastructure. If it doesn't pass, then that shows us that the community isn't willing to pay for that and go above and beyond what we are already working on and paying for, in my opinion. Seth, you had your hand up. Do you have anything else to add to that? Okay.
Thanks. Any other public comment?
We do have a.
You're on good. Hello, Jack Cartwright, community member, Cove Fire. Just a couple things. As Tesha said, we've had survey meetings, community meetings, all this information as far as what the community wants for a community center is out there. And honestly, you look around, you look at community centers, they're all pretty much the same. They're all pretty generic. It's a place with a big room and a couple other small rooms that you can use for other things. We talked of learning centers. We learned, and things may have changed, but we learned that basically with the airport right there, with the airstrip, you can't really call it a daycare or a learning center. We can create the space and have something like First Five or something, but it's a proximity thing. With daycares and schools and everything being a certain distance from airports. So we can create a space and then have something like First Five, but it's not a daycare. It's just not labeled like that. Same thing is when we were talking with the medical things. All they really want is a room, a place, a side room where a doctor can come in and do a clinic one day or something. People can come in and get, some medical stuff. Not anything actually set up and consistently set for like a exam room or anything like that. That's kind of what the community was looking for at that time. Because it had been historically offered up here. We actually had a room here at the station. It's actually a sleeper room now, but that used to be a medical room.
that serve that purpose. There also was a requirement from the SCC or FAA, sorry, wrong agency, about the pilot's lounge. About there being any kind of new facility over there had to have any kind of community center or anything over there had to have something that was dedicated to the airstrip. Basically, had to have an area where just pilots could come in, couch, relax, take some if they need to take a relax for hours or whatever. I can't speak exactly to what the requirements were, but that was part of the stipulation. That's why that was built into any of the former plans. You always saw that kind of area that was the pilot's lounge. That's why that requirement was in there. So yeah, just a couple things on there. Don't think you got to reinvent the wheel. We got community centers all over the place. Go to the Riverwood. I mean, look at community centers and see what they offer. Look at what ours offers. We have a kitchen, a big meeting hall, space for our library, and then a couple other rooms where we can have other rooms going on. If we can have, larger areas that could be broken up into a couple areas, that was a nice thing about the plan that we did have. We can kind of design the big hall, could be broken up into 3 different halls. Basically just put an accordion door through, and then you could rent it out for several things. A yoga class going on, a martial arts class going on, and that way we didn't have basically the conflicts that we currently have of just one class at a time. So that was kind of the purpose behind that. But yeah, please utilize what we've got. I mean, as a long-term resident, I've been to so many meetings and discussions about this kind of stuff. I know the whole community has, and it's just, it's that feeling of stagnation. We're just spinning the same wheels over and over and stuff like that. It's not that hard to figure out what really community needs on that kind of stuff. It's pretty much generic stuff, just an area to hold stuff.
So when you say use what you got, are you referring to the existing community center, or are you referring to the work that's been done in the committee plans that were, and perhaps going and coming up with the plans that reflect what other towns have done with the real generic, basic?
I just mean the responses the communities have already gotten or given, whether you kind of whether to suggest for expanding the new community center, because we looked at that before, and there was misinformation on why we couldn't do that before, in relation to grants and stuff like that. We didn't have perfect information, so that's why we completely went with building a new community center.
Okay.
So whether it goes one way or the other, I don't care. I mean, I think it could be good either way, either direction. I know it does need to be done. It needed to be done for 15 years now. But yeah, I don't think it's something that we kind of need to keep going down the road to figure out what we want. A community center, like I said, it's just a space, and as long as we know that we want a commercial kitchen in there, because we have cooking events and stuff like that, and we know kind of the spaces that we already want. It's not like we have to create an environment for these things to happen. We just have the space, and people will create the environment when they want to have those things.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay, that sounds good. And I think that, like you said, like Nick has brought up, and what you just said, like it doesn't have to be all, especially architecture, special architecture that also adds to the increase of the building cost. And that unfortunately was what happened with the trilogy plans that were submitted without anybody seeing them. Is it was all custom design, and would have increased the cost of building it.
I mean, you're going to have basic stuff. You're going to have musical stuff there, or probably theater performances, whatever may happen. So you want some kind of acoustics, which we don't have in the current one.
Still no Bluetooth speaker.
But again, it's just like these things are pretty basic too, as far as normal community center design. So again, don't reinvent the wheel. Check out existing community centers and see what's available and see what people like and don't like.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, Chris, do you have just a moment.
The thing.
Just a moment, please. Thank you. Do you have does that help you with what when you're looking at the budget, what we're wanting?
Well, I would just say to rehash, I think first things first, structural engineer, let's check it out, see what we can do with the community center. And then in the budget, we'll need, however much that's gonna be to have someone come out and look at it. And then two, a budget to upkeep what needs to be repaired. So that's what I would say about that. Yeah, Jerry?
And I agree with Jack's thought about it's just a bunch of boxes.
Yeah.
I mean, part of the idea is the architect engineer comes back and says, here's what you need to make your bunch of boxes compliant. And then maybe we have a town hall meeting to ask the community, what do you want to put in those boxes?
Right. And how much would you pay to rent those out?
Oh, and by the way, I've never heard the requirement of a pilot's lounge.
Yeah, right.
And I know a lot of airports don't have them. So I don't know where that came from.
It was part of having it in that area.
I can't see FAA having a requirement for that. Big deal.
Okay, we have Jack.
Yeah, just to answer that, I believe it stemmed from basically because that area is an airport use area and building something in that. Again, I can't speak to the full thing. That was basically what was presented to us as a requirement from Bill Young at that point, who was the general manager, that was a necessary requirement in the design.
For that location.
So yeah, for that specific location. If we were to put it in a different location, obviously we wouldn't have to do that. But yeah, it was for that location. So yeah, again, that's something that can be delved into further as a board. We took, what the general manager had given us and didn't dive deeper into it on that. So yeah.
And how long ago was that, Jack?
Well, now we're going on 10 years.
10 years ago.
Yeah, I wonder if it's changed.
It's very possible, but yeah.
I'm sure. That's what I'm saying. It might be even. Yeah. Yeah, it's weird.
Did you have anything to add to that? And you can give your experience as being on the committee, the community center committee.
Yeah, I was on the committee for years, probably 6 in total, getting multiple town halls, multiple meetings with people, architects in our community. We have the information of what the community wants is all there. We have it, I believe, all down in different reports or pages or whatever. But as far as the community center as it exists now, I think it's knowing that it is where everybody will go in an emergency, and inevitably we are going to have an emergency. We at least need to keep it from becoming more dilapidated. So I think even before we get an architect and before we do anything else, we need to have our local contractors address the problems that will knowingly destroy that building, whether it be leaks in the windows or whatever. So, and then everything can be discussed after that. But we're coming into summertime. We hope that we don't have one, but it is important that be well maintained. Bathrooms operating. Just a space because it will eventually be used for that. So.
Right. Thank you. Okay. Any other public comment? Are we ready to move on? All right. So we're going to move on to number 3, which is Jerry's forte, which is the airport AWOS and the GPS instrument approach.
Do you mind if I have a brief slideshow?
Do whatever you need to do.
I'm a believer in touching and talking.
Sorry, we don't have it.
That's all right. I always have this. There's no batteries. Good morning, everybody. I'm Jerry Jackson. I'm your resident pilot airplane owner. And I want to go over these 2 concepts in a little bit more detail so we all are familiar with and we all know what we're talking about when we say AWOS or RNAV GPS. So that's what I want to do today. Next slide. In particular, I want to break it into 2 pieces. Go into a little bit more detail. What is an AWOS? What are the cost benefits and status of this initiative? A month ago, we had our town hall meeting, and I was pleasantly surprised. It seemed like there was a general support for both the AWOS and the RNAV. This is my typo, by the way. And I want to go over, where am I 3 weeks later, 4 weeks later? And then what I see as our next steps. And I want to do the same thing for the RNAV GPS. What is it? What are the cost benefits and status of it as far as what I've done the last 3 weeks? What are the next steps to be done? And then I want to finish up with requested actions of our committee to RID. Okay, next slide. So AWAS, in particular, we're talking about an AWAS-3. The -3 tells how much detail is being broadcast. Okay, and there's different costs associated with benefits. But it seemed like to me the AWAS-3 was the best choice of the ones that were offered. AWAS stands for Automated Weather Observing System. It's based at the airport. It gives real-time data, weather data at the airport, and it's updated every minute. So it's very current. It's a recorded message that gives the current weather, and you can get it by radio pilots will have a frequency. It'll be on the charts they have. It'll say our airport and have a frequency up there and say AWAS-3. So they can dial in and listen to it. You can usually hear about 50 miles out. You can also call. Okay, it's published. FAA publishes it. You can find it on a number of different websites. There's a phone number associated with it. So you could be sitting in Los Angeles and wondering, gee, should we go to Shelter Cove and call it and find out what the real-time weather is? Or you can land somewhere. I landed in Little River a couple days ago coming up here, and I called. Well, we don't have one, so I actually have an Arlo on my house. I can look at the airport, so I use that. But it'd be great if you just call and get this information.
Can general public access it?
Oh, yeah,
If I wanted
Anybody.
up to date with it?
Anybody.
We put it to our website.
Exactly. Boaters can use it. I mean, the general public can use it. And the FAA realizes that and likes that concept, that anybody can tap into it. Now, they'll use it as an official weather station here. The other cool thing. So when you ask for Shelter Cove weather, that'll be part of the, NOAA's weather to us. And then lastly, airborne equipment. My aircraft has the capability of just picking it up. I'll see it when I dial in waypoint where I'm going. It'll come up with the AWAS information right there. So I get that as well. We have a whole lot of nearby airports that have these. Little River is one again I used this week. Willits Airport's got one. Fortuna's got one. Eureka's got one. There's a AWAS-2 located at Garberville. It doesn't give all the information, but it gives quite a bit. So it's a fairly common thing in airports, and you see it on the charts all the time. And it's kind of surprising we don't have one, quite frankly, given our weather. Well, what's reported and why? I broke this into a table. So next slide. Here's what's reported by the AWAS system, and here's why. And it's in this order. The first thing you hear on the recording is the location. It'll say Shelter Cove Airport and the time. So you can sit there and look at it and say, oh yeah, this is current. And that's why they do it. You don't want to be listening to the wrong airport, and it's Reading or something, and it says clear blue skies, and it turns out you got the wrong airport dialed in. So it confirms the airport you're interested in and the currency. You can double check to make sure it's not obsolete or an hour ago. The next thing it reports is the wind speed and direction. It tells you, how fast is the wind blowing. It'll tell you if it's gusting or not, and it will tell you out of what direction. And this is extremely helpful to pilots to figure out what runway to land on. Our airport, I don't know if you know it, many times we're the exact opposite of the the general wind out here. This part of the country will usually get a northwest wind, and we'll get a south wind, southerly wind, because we're in this eddy. And it throws a lot of pilots off. They'll come in here thinking they're heading into the wind, and all of a sudden they realize the only indicator they got is that windsock. And you're right there, and there's the windsock, and you're like, oh, I'm coming downwind, which is a dangerous thing. And also, if you got another pilot on the ground that's starting to take off into the wind, and the other guy coming in is thinking the wind's going the other direction, they're going to be head on to each other. So it's extremely important for pilots to know, what is the correct runway to be used based on the wind direction. And the velocity helps too, because it may be too gusty here to land, or maybe the crosswind might be too great and it's too dangerous. And again, the pilot will know that by listening to it rather than trying to see a windsock and then interpret what the windsocks do. Ceiling, the next thing it reports is cloud ceiling and visibility. We get fog here, we get low ceilings, it prevents planes from coming in. It be nice to know that if we were 100 miles away, 200 miles away, another airport using a phone, what's the weather like now? Or, as I get a post as I'm 50 miles out or 25 miles out. Are we what's called VFR or IFR conditions? VFR is visual flight rules. And for here, this airport, we have to have a ceiling above 1,700 feet. And we also have to have 3 miles visibility to be considered a VFR pilot or VFR airport or conditions to land there. That's the only way you can land here. You can't land here under IFR conditions currently. IFR is less than this. So it's a lower ceiling, shorter visibility. Then it's an IFR airport. We're not one of those.
So this would, question.
Yeah.
So this would allow us to be an IR?
It would get us the next step. The IFR one we'll talk about next. That's the RNAV. This will tell the pilot, can I even get in there or not? The next thing it reports is temperature and dew point in that order. And dew point gives you a feel for whether or not we got fog either coming in or going out. The bigger the spread of those two temperatures, the less the probability of fog. As they come together, if it's a foggy day, they're the same number. The dew point will be the same number as your temperature. The pilot will know that. Like, oh, it's foggy there. I use this all the time to figure out on other airports, is it getting better or worse? Like I use it at Garberville a lot, coming in there. And then lastly, it gives you the altimeter setting. It's really a barometric pressure setting. It allows the pilot to dial in the correct altitude here. Okay, so if they're coming in from someplace else, they might have Santa Rosa's altimeter setting, which will be different than here. So it gives them an accurate one. And also, if they're sitting on the ground and getting ready to take off, they can dial it in as they're listening to it, and it resets their altimeter on the airplane. So this is what the AWOS does, and then it repeats itself. Okay, if you're curious, if you call this number, you'll get little rivers, and you can hear exactly what I just told you, how it routes through the data. Okay, next slide.
Would you like us to call and play that?
Okay, you want to? This is when they say, don't, this is a trial, and I was an attorney. I don't know what's going to happen, but let's give it a shot.
It doesn't fit. It doesn't fit.
Yeah, I know. You gotta quit.
Automated weather observation 1803 Zulu. Wind 280 at 11 knot. Visibility more than 10. Sky condition clear below 12,000. Temperature 14 Celsius. Dew point 7 Celsius. Altimeter 3010. Inches of mercury.
There you go.
Cool.
That's what it would be like. That's an AWOS 3. That's what we're advocating here as well. Okay, thank you. Okay, who benefits? Well, obviously the pilots benefit. It's going to give them a safer flying environment. It's going to give them the ability to predict it, anticipate what to do, divert if necessary, if the weather's poor or whatever. Both incoming pilots and departing pilots. But there's a secondary group. I think it's even more important, quite frankly. And because our runway is an evacuation point, and we give real-time weather data to the Coast Guard for their helicopters, to our fire department if necessary, to CERT, if they know, hey, it's a VFR, we're fine, we bring planes in. Those people can use this information as well. And the third group would be the business owners. If a pilot knows he can get in here, they'll come here. And they'll bring their families, they'll stay overnight, they'll eat at the restaurants, etc. So there's this added capability of bringing in more customers to the community. Estimated cost. Now, good news and bad news. Bad news, I got a quote from Mesotech, which is the world leader in providing these. They're actually based in Sacramento. And we got a quote for here for about 100K. Okay, but here's the good news. We qualify for 90% funding because we're a special airport. Zero Quebec 5, Shoulder Cove, is part of this National Plan for Integrated Airport Systems, with the feds want them to upgrade their systems, and they're willing to pay 90% of the cost. So it would cost us $10,000.
Uh-oh.
I did speak with Mead and Hunt as a person who knows a lot, because one of the things that we don't have in there is layout plans so long as that cost. Mead and Hunt, it's a group who will do airport layout plans. And what they said to me is that because we're an unclassified airport, unclassified in the NPIS, that generally the federal funding does not want to pay for anybody who has that type of classification, and they said that we would most likely have to reach out to the state DOT to get funding for anything.
But that is contrary to what I'm finding here.
Okay.
So I'll dig deeper.
Yeah.
And I've talked to the FAA contact that oversees this,
Okay.
Cassandra Brown. She's real excited about it.
Yeah.
She was the one that pointed out to me.
I love the idea.
Mesotech also pointed out to me that high probability we'll get funding. Okay?
Good. Great.
So, this is my status right now.
Yeah.
I'm talking to these people. So far, it looks good. Okay, next topic is the RNAV GPS. RNAV has actually been around for about 30 years. It stands for Area Navigation. It was used back in the days when they had VORs. I remember when I was first learning how to fly, it was a big, hot, new technical thing. And then when GPS came on the scene about 25 years ago, revolutionized it. Because you didn't have to have any equipment, special equipment on the ground to make it work. We've got the satellites above for the global positioning system that we all use in our cars. What this does is it's simply a three-dimensional path that gives waypoints at various locations for an aircraft to follow to an airport and monitor their descent to keep them clear of any obstacles, trees, mountains, etc. Okay. This is Little River's approach plate, and I used this about 3 days ago. And I've used the RNAV approaches on a number of different airports, and they're easy, they're great, they're safe. And again, you don't need any hardware here on the ground. The airplane has it on their instrument. This is what it looks like. These are available online. When I file my flight plan, there's a button I push there on the web screen, on the FAA web screen, that downloads this thing for me, and I can print it up. I also have it on board my aircraft. It comes up electronically on my instrument panel. It even shows where my airplane is. So it almost makes it easy, They're great, great systems. Next slide. Who benefits? Well, it's the same crowd, with one exception. Instrument pilots would be using this. I guess visual pilots could, but instrument pilots would be legally using it. And I checked, and 54% of the licensed pilots in the United States have instrument ratings. I have an instrument rating, for example. You also have to have instrument-equipped aircraft, but that's not a big deal either. And there's a few things you have to have considered instrument-equipped, like a GPS, and an altimeter, and a radio. So it's not that big of a hurdle. They would benefit because now we could get in here under IFR conditions. We don't have to wait for VFR conditions. We could come in with lower ceilings, lower visibility using this system. And that's the big push. It's an instrument. It makes us become an instrument airport. Okay, so more aircraft can come in, which is, to me, very important for this crowd, for evacuations. We got low visibility, low ceilings. They can still bring in helicopters and evacuation aircraft and depart. And then lastly, the tertiary crew, you got pilots still coming in, even under IFR conditions. So it adds to that base. Cost, I couldn't believe this. I asked the FAA this multiple times. It's free. You submit an application. FAA assigns a team to develop the approach plates for you. They'll do a departure plate as well as an arrival plates. So I'm coming and going. Although the guy told me, who I talked to, Wesley Owens, he says, your runway is obsolete. The numbering on your runway is wrong. And we're off by about 9 degrees. Our headings are 30 and 12. That represents 300 degrees northwest. This is 120 degrees, which is southeast. They always lop off the last zero in the number of runways. Ours should really be 3-1 and 1-3. Okay. The reason? This was set up more than 40 years ago, and the magnetic north has moved. It moves about 30 miles a year. I don't know if you knew that. Because it's, the magnetic North Pole wanders. Okay, so they have to redo these about every, I don't know, 20 years. And Wesley told me, he says, yeah, yours is out of compliance right now. You're gonna have to repaint the numbers. And I guess the beauty of that is, well, you only got to paint a 1 and a 3. Okay. So I thought, to me, that wasn't a big deal. Okay. I've gone ahead and submitted the initial application.
Nice.
That's how I got a hold of Wesley. And again, Wesley and I talked a lot this week, just confirming stuff. Like I couldn't believe it was free. And he says, oh yeah, we'll do it. We got a team working on it. He did tell me the AWAS would make it better. He said, if you got AWAS installed, it drops your minimums further down. Okay, so it opens it up to even more aircraft coming in as far as visibility and ceiling. So it kind of works in concert with the AWAS. We also talked about nighttime use, and I said, I don't think the community, and judging from the comments, the community would go with lighting. And I said, do you need, on a runway, you got what's called a rail, REIL, stands for runway end illumination light. It tells you what the end of the runway is. And then you also got the long ones, right? And I think I mentioned it in the meeting last month. You can make it so the pilot can click the microphone and they come on. But the community was not thrilled about that. So I told Wesley, I said, no, this is a daytime only operation.
Nice.
Do the IFR ability allow for nighttime? Just
It could.
instrument?
Well, we'd have to have
Yes,
lighting. We'd have to have lighting. So if you don't have lighting, it wouldn't be approved for nighttime use. So that's our trade-off. Okay. To me, okay, that's our trade-off. The next steps. Did we skip a slide? I guess we did. No, go ahead. Next slide. So here's what I want to do next. If our group is okay with it, maybe we got to ask formally RID to let me continue with my investigation. There's a couple of forms I got to fill out. I got to start putting in who's the owner, Mr. Lynn here, and who's the advocate, which would be me. So that way we can kind of push it along a little bit more. Short of spending money, okay? If we get to a point we got to start spending money, obviously, RID's got to make another decision. So I'm saying, let me push the ball as far as I can without spending money. Secondly, there's a form, 7460-1 has to be submitted for the AWAS. It's a 1-page form, okay? And you and I would have to do it together, but it's 21 questions. It's easy. So that would be another next step. And then I'd like to start digging around to see that 90% funding, to see if indeed that's real. Okay, start making some inquiries. And again, I'm happy to push this ball, kick this ball down the road. That's for the AWAS. For the RNAV, again, let's ask RIDS, give me the green light, short of spending money, and let's start doing it. I'm not sure we get any funding. I'm not even sure it's worth it. I don't know what it would cost to repaint those numbers.
We're talking about trying to do it in-house to repaint the lines. I don't know how we could do that with numbers too, but.
Yeah.
We gotta get the project together before we ask.
But we have to repaint it, and FAA's got a circular that tells you the font size. I'm sure we can apply with it now, so we can just mimic it. Okay, and with that, last slide. Okay, here's runway 12. This is my app that I used, and it's really got a heading, and sure enough, good old Wesley was right. We're 9 degrees off. We're almost 10 degrees out of compliance. It should be 13 instead of 12. The other flip side back up here, instead of saying 30, it should say 31. You're heading this way. So indeed, we are on.
I didn't either. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you.
Gary, so good. Thank you. Yeah, I learned so much. That was great.
Okay, so we're gonna open this up to some comment session.
I have a question. Couple of questions. First, what's the difference again in information between the AWAS 2 and the AWAS 3?
Yeah. First of all, they're cheaper. The AWAS 2 is cheaper as far as hardware. But I noticed Garberville doesn't tell me, and it drives me nuts. They don't tell me the ceiling or the visibility. And to me, Garberville gets actually more fog than here. I don't know if you knew that. And many times when I get ready for a flight, I'll move my airplane to here because I know I can leave. Where Garberville many times is fogged in because of the river right next to it. And to me, it's more dangerous because you got mountains all around you. So that's one of the key pieces of information that's not included on the -2.
All right, and the other question is there, what equipment, where would that, is there equipment involved, where would that be, where were you thinking to install that equipment?
Great question. We need an antenna tower, and I went down to the wastewater treatment plant, and I was meeting, with Travis down there, and we were looking at the existing tower right now. We'll do it. They only need a 30-footer. I think that one's about 40. So we can use it, and that actually knocks off about 10K off that 100K price I quoted you. So we'd save some money by co-locating the equipment on that tower. So it would be located there at the treatment plant. That's where it would be.
I guess I have more of a comment, and that's if you were to continue to go down this path, I'd recommend that you work with staff, and so that everybody's on the same page, everybody's receiving the same information. It's not just coming from you. And I think, Jessica, you head up most of the information gathering for the airport, correct? So really, like when you have these talks with Wesley or even Cassandra, having her in on some of those discussions so that we can hear the same information from the district standpoint, and it's not just coming from a private.
Be happy to start putting you on the email chain.
Yeah. And then my other, and I see we have but I guess mine would actually be for the fire department. Would this help with our helicopter medevacs, being able to increase them coming out here? Because I know sometimes they say it's too foggy and then we're not in fog.
Yeah, it really depends. I'd say yes, overall it would help that. And I was gonna say, let's just skip all this other stuff from here and I want to get it done. Because this isn't really the platform for it. This is the strategic planning committee.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a specific project that should have been done a while ago. Jessica was on time, Chris was on time. But I think depending on who you talk to, the difference between Jessica calling the FAA and me calling the FAA, the fire chief, and bringing him as the pilot, it's a different conversation, right? They have thousands of airports across the U.S. calling in trying to get money, where we're doing, 30, 40 medevacs a year.
Okay.
And so add me to the email chain, we'll get it started. And then I'm working on a fire safety airport plan. Basically, how can we, it's got to be a long-term plan within our next 5-year plan, but, helipads and stuff like that. Same thing with the night. The community won't go for a night runway, but we would like to have some sort of beacon or night pad for our pilots coming in, because we're losing our combat aviators. So the combat aviators are a lot more aggressive coming into fog and other things. Classically trained aviators are what we're seeing now in the rotary wing field. They're not super comfortable flying in mountains and fog and other stuff. So, and Coast Guard paid for our AWACS in Neyland when I was up there at the helipack base. So, if we can get them to be like, hey, you guys want to know what the weather before you fly too is. So, there's a bunch of options, but I don't necessarily think that the route is the right route.
Okay. So basically, looking at it more as a fire safety, emergency safety avenue, rather than on the admin side of us just trying to get
usually an easier sell.
A public safety. Okay. I would still want her at least included in the. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Chief, I want to apologize. I've been meaning to come by and swing by and see you and tell you. I'm sorry.
And it's a different route. That's what I was going to bring up too. Is what is aviation or the airport doing Parks and Rec, right? There's a historical reason why we have it in there, because that's where it fit. But most places it's going to be transportation, and it's a different route. And so again, it's just an example of the RID shoving everything into a certain thing and putting it in somebody's plate. What we need to look at is even the grants you go after, it's not necessarily a Parks and Rec grant, right? It'd be more of a transportation grant. So same thing with a lot of other stuff that we blend into that. It's really important to direct you on that route.
Mm-hmm. So your suggestion is take the airport off of our Parks and Rec strategic plan.
I don't know enough of it to suggest that, but I do think it's in the wrong spot. It's in a placeholder, I think, in the way the RID is set up. But I kind of see it more as like our waterway access and our boating community and that kind of thing. There are roads that are coming in. Even though the RID doesn't have direct we do have a little bit of involvement in the roads, but we don't have direct ownership of the roads, but they're key to our community, more so than the airport, right? I'm an aviation guy, I like saying the airport's super important, but our roads are also very important. And I think the airport fits closer with a roads committee or a transportation committee than a Parks and Rec. But it's a kind of a place where we have it, right? We have the budget lines, Parks and Rec, and that's where the airport falls in. But yeah, it's really hard. You know, our GM is also our airport director, which adds another thing that Chris has to study and keep up on. You know, and then Jessica is the one that does the admin for the airport. So then that some places that's a full-time job. So it's just one more thing to look at, but for the future too, is what are we looking at for Parks and Rec versus transportation? Because there's other conversations in transportation we're not having because the airport's in Parks and Rec.
Okay. That's good to know. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Board.
Okay, any other public comment?
Yeah, I don't know if it's directly necessary, but if there is any question or anything from the board as far as like businesses go, I can say as a former business owner, we were very in tune with the pilot community. They would call us consistently to see what the weather was like in Shelter Cove before they took off for Auburn or Sacramento or something like that. They'd give us a call all the time just to see what the weather was like, whether they could come in or not. So it is a very valuable thing. I think it is something that, you know, would be great to go. So if you guys need to, you know, push the board in any direction, you guys have that.
Awesome.
We call that AWAS Jack.
For free.
Well, thank you so much, Jerry. This was really awesome. Very enlightening, and I think this is a really good direction to go. Okay, so if there's nothing else, we will go on to the Parks and Rec intern, which I know is Wendy's.
Yeah, so I learned yesterday that we were having this conversation today, but I had a brief conversation with Chris about a website I stumbled into, and then I did cursory research about this. But there are college degrees in Parks and Recreation, and in order to graduate, a lot of these kids need to have internship hours, 600 to 1,000 hours of internship. And I just thought it would be great for us to tap into that. I know that I learned that Cal State Humboldt and Cal Poly both have that curriculum, Parks and Rec. And I haven't spoken to anyone about how many hours each graduate needs to have in order to graduate of unpaid internship. But yeah, they're unpaid. Some of the advertisements I looked into paid them nominal, $11 an hour, $14 an hour. But either way, I think it would be a great way to have someone come in here and organize the park and rec department, figure out how to deal with the sport court, figure out how to work in the nature trails. I just think it would be a great opportunity for an intern at a low cost for us. And that was a conversation that we had, and apparently you liked it. So we just wanted to know what everyone else's opinion would. I would love to have them housed at the community center with an office down there, with an open and vibrant community center, you know, organizing activities. But that's just my vision. I'm just throwing it out there to see what other people think about the opportunity having someone in charge of Park and Rec.
Let me just add to, we're still in the exploratory phase of it, right? Just
Oh,
answering
totally
questions.
exploratory. And I'll dig deeper if people are interested.
Not like it's
No, it was just a conversation that was interesting.
Yeah.
Well, you said unpaid, and I liked that aspect of it. However, if there is a fee with it, I think that the money that would be going towards that direction would be better put to use with hiring or contracting out to a seasonal worker or temporary worker that helps us maintain not just the Parks and Rec, but also like our power poles, our water hydrants that are scattered throughout the cove. I forget how many we have, but I know it's what.
Don't we have someone in charge of
We
it?
don't. No, the fire department at times takes that on, but we're really short staffed. And when it comes to, we've been having requests and for a more for having an employee, like even for training on how to maintain the golf course, getting those. We're just on such limited amount of funds that if this were to cost us something, personally, I would not be for that. If it was completely unpaid and they're just getting their credits and their experience, that's one thing. But if we were actually looking at having to put something into the budget to pay them, that, in my opinion, that would be that cost would be better utilized for having a part-time employee or a part-time contractor that came in and maintained all of the different district properties, as well as our electrical utility poles and water hydrants and such. We do have that need, and it's just something that every year we're having to figure out how to get everything done, and with the limited amount of funds that we have.
Laura, what's your opinion?
Hold on, I'm not done yet.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. The other part of that is that this has been something that's come up. We've been needing another. We go back and forth on whether or not we need an actual district employee to do all of that, or if we contract it out. And if we were to contract that type of a service out, then we're not responsible for workman's comp and stuff like that, or having to do the union wages and whatnot. So just my opinion is that if it doesn't cost us anything and it's just getting some youth down here to help get caught up on certain projects, that's one thing. But if it was to actually be taking money from our budget, I would have a hard time with that.
I think the Sunset is great. Absolutely. Give them their credits, and, depending on what their area of focus is and what they want to do with Parks and Rec, that would kind of determine how they would assist us and help us out. It could be organizing all this data and organizing these projects, or helping us look at grants, or it could be clearing the nature trails. So I think it would kind of depend on what the intern specializes in, what they want to do. And then we could kind of figure out where to place them. But I think if it's unpaid, that's amazing. I think if it's paid, that's going to be a little bit harder, just because we all know our budget.
Well, the budget really is on $150,000 that they spent last year in the golf course. I feel like it would be a more efficient use of that money, because if you break that down, that's someone working 40 hours a week for 52 weeks at $75 an hour, and that obviously didn't happen on the golf course. So I feel like there's better ways to more efficiently use that money. And even if it is 11, I saw $11 an hour and $14 an hour for Chico, pretty nominal. But I do want to throw in that if we do want to have someone come out here, we would have to house them, because there's no way that they could live out here on that sort of way. So it would be a special scenario. But I think we're just looking into maybe getting opinions on, is this a person that we need? Is this a person that we could utilize? I read this from the SCPOA end of the year newsletter. And under Park, did you know that the new RID committee now oversees parks, trails, and the upcoming multi-use sport court? Like, there's no way that we are managing the sport court. So that's misinformation, and maybe something perfect for a park and recreation intern. Because once that comes to boot, and that'll be a year, someone will need to have eyeballs, and there's ways to make money off of a sport court that someone is savvy could cover their hourly.
What we would need to do, the submission process to have an intern, like what Cal Poly, like what their policies are.
That's going to be my next phone call. If this is tempting to people.
I think
are these kids, are they actually doing internships? Is this a thing? And I'll dig deeper if that's the direction people want. But if it's not, then I'm not.
I haven't fully researched anything like this on my own, but I know in my previous nonprofit work, it was something that was debated as possibly not worthwhile, because it takes a lot for the organization that's hosting an intern to do that, because there are certain requirements in order to use someone as an intern, and within that requirement, you have to be contributing towards their educational experience. So it has to kind of be an educational opportunity for them. It's not an opportunity to use them as a labor.
I would find it education. I mean, if they were managing programs and in starting up programs, I would consider that 100% education.
Well, and I've been an intern before, and there are things that the employer has to submit on their behalf. They have to write weekly reports. They have to say what they're doing, how many hours they've done. They have to sign off on documents stating that they've done those hours so they can get that credit. So there will be break time used for that intern, which does in turn cost money. So I do see that too. Yeah, so if we figure out where we would use this intern and it is needed unpaid, it might be worth using some of that written employee time. So I personally think that I would love to just find out more about it and see what the process is. So I think it could be a good idea. So that's where I stand on it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Jerry, what's your opinion?
I think you guys have covered it. I mean, I think it's a good idea, but we need to know the details. Does Cal Poly Humboldt offer it? Kind of the first question, and then
They do.
I think you hadn't done the call yet.
Oh, well, I've read their website. I just haven't spoken to a person. It's definitely on their curriculum under arts.
No, do we need a little bit more information than that? But I also agree that if we have to pay, forget it, because again, that's a bit of a quicksand, because then you do have to worry about benefits and retirement, workers' comp, et cetera.
Also, yeah, I'm down with getting more information, but I want in that added cost, like housing that's quite a bit of money right off the bat. So nothing's free, as we have found working within a government agency, grants, et cetera. So, I mean, I'm into having more information on it so that we can make a better recommendation to the board. But at this moment, I'm hesitant to say that we would utilize it, but I'm okay with getting more information.
Okay, any public comment?
All right, last one, unless you guys call on me. It feels like you guys have a little bit of mission creep away from the original mission, right? And it's actually portrayed on House, Capoa, or whatever one that was that put that out, kind of identified you guys, right? You're not going to be managing anything. You know, it's an advisory committee that's building the strategic plan, and I think same thing is the information about how much we pay at Parks and Rec guys, misinformation, right? Going to Jessica and getting the actual numbers and asking them how it's broken down would be the proper way of saying, hey, why is that 170 grand, right? Our benefit packages that we pay full-time employees is expensive. It's almost 100% of what their actual wage. You know, if I make 100,000, district's almost paying 80,000 to pay off the benefits, the wages, the payroll tax, and everything else. So, and overtime for coverage of utility on duty. So there's a lot more. It's not, it's not A plus B equals C. So the other side is what you guys come up with your plan wise. That's great. That's like should go in the strategic plan. Following up for it and saying, hey, we're going to go find this intern program. That's down the road, right? And so I think you guys are going to end up prolonging the process of building a strategic plan if we don't kind of reel it back in and say, hey, these are all great ideas for the Parks and Rec possible manager position, but not necessarily going into the full details of every single idea you guys come up with. And I'm concerned about that list that you guys got from the survey being used improperly as a list of projects and not a list of ideas that fit into a certain section. Exactly. So when you guys break it up into those sections, it's a great idea, but don't get stuck on we have to do every one of those projects. We've been down that road before within a very similar committee that's been kind of getting deja vu from 10 years ago. Different people. You guys are much better than the last people.
That's what you want. That's what you
Right,
join the
yeah.
group.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick, for that reminder. And it is really important for us to remember what we're here for. And that is coming up with going off of the draft strategic plan for Parks and Rec that the general manager has started, and then getting it finalized to take to the board. That's really our main focus right now. All of the other stuff is kind of fluff at this point.
Big picture. It's very important, but
Yeah.
we need to get the big picture dialed in first. And then we
Yeah.
can start putting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so if there's not any more public comment, we will go on to 5, and I know this is Ms. Tasha, so the Greenbelt, Greenbelt field trip for committee members.
Yes, I asked this to be put on here today, mainly to discuss and then potentially bring it back next month to take action on it. But basically, we used to have all the maps up there to see all of the district green belts. They've been taken down right now. But we have, a lot of our projects will be potentially utilizing district properties, which is public lands. And initially, my main idea was to have the whole committee have meetings, some field trip meetings to look at the different properties to really see what they can be used for. We have a lot of property, but not all of it is actually buildable. And when you're looking at a map, it looks buildable. Everything looks usable, but the reality is when you're out in the field and you're actually looking at these properties, they're not all of them, right? And so I had hoped to, as a whole committee, be able to take time and go do special field trips and look at the different, divide the Cove up and meet up and go look at these different areas of the Cove. However, doing it as a whole committee does produce some challenges and extra work for staff as far as they would have to be publicly noticed, the time and the addresses published. And so so it really does add more to staff time. So after reflecting on all of that, I'm more wanting us to discuss and bring back next month has an action item, and hopefully we have more people sitting up here. Has doing a subcommittee and having a subcommittee go out and view the different areas of the Cove and maybe write down what projects could potentially be done in those areas and just identify which ones could actually be used for actual structure buildings and then which ones would be for trails and parks and whatnot. So that's those are my thoughts on that. And of course, I'm very interested in that. So
what would you say are the top 3 locations if we were to do a field trip solo? Willow Glen, Telegraph Creek, and
what do you mean solo?
Like if I just wanted to trip up there and see what was going on.
Well, it would be all of those areas would be good. The Telegraph Creek and Willow Glen, the upper Cove would be good, but also in the lower Cove, identifying other possible building sites or whether it's
Mark Mitchell was talking about extending the Bill Franklin Trail so that it became a loop, kind of going.
Yeah, okay. So stuff like that, but it would need to be and any of us as soloists can go out and look at our properties, but I would like to see a more cohesive group going out together as a subcommittee.
Is there a good map that identifies the Greenbelt areas?
Yes, we had them, and I was going to see about how we can maybe have them displayed. If there's a place we can have them displayed at all times. We had them up on the wall. Those were those maps that we had for the town hall, because those were really good. That showed all of those.
Our found on our website, there's hundreds of tabs that says Greenbelt, so you can find all of them on there.
Oh, thank you.
I love this idea. My suggestion would be if we had a list of things that we needed to find Greenbelt property for. For example, like how we talked about maybe doing a potential food forest, right? Mm-hmm. Having that idea in mind or those ideas in mind. And then when we go look at the property, then we can say, oh, this would be good for this. I think that would be really helpful. And then maybe even we could do to break it down further, instead of us looking at all of this property, we could each maybe divvy up the different things that we want to go where, like, food forest or a dog park or, whatever. And then when we go look at the areas and we're like, oh, this would be good for that.
I could see that. I think if we have 3 people on this committee that takes this on, then the information would be more cohesive than if we just divided that amongst ourselves. So that the 3 people can have that conversation on.
So you want to do like a subcommittee?
Yeah.
So a subcommittee for Greenbelt, and then we'd have a list of all the things that we want to do.
Like for trails, parks, and that the parks could include for picnic areas or dog parks or expanding the trails.
Right.
And so definitely, but if we have 3 people being able to get together and looking at the maps and saying, okay, this is where we want to identify for trails, this is what we want to go look at and see if we can do, picnic tables or whatnot. I think that would make it more cohesive than us each individually trying to take on something and then coming back and saying, oh, well, I think this should go here. I think that should go there individually. I think that could get messy.
Okay. Then I could see that being on the action items for next meeting.
That's what I'm hoping for.
Just for clarification, I believe this is so, but by having a subcommittee, we don't have to go through the Brown Act requirements. Is that correct?
It means that we can have up to 3 people rather than it's the majority. We're still under the Brown Act, but the three people could be discussing things outside of this open.
You don't have to have a public meeting.
Exactly. We don't have to advertise it. We don't have, exactly.
Great. Is there any public comment? Yeah.
A subcommittee would also be able to advise the general manager when there's properties that are up for donation back to the district. That would, I know a lot of times the board can't make it out, or it just doesn't fall into when it needs to be voted on. So it would be nice if somebody that was looking at a bigger picture of recreation and what it could be used for was able to give all your advice to the general manager on any potential value that might have to the district that would not be what he would be looking at. Generally, it's like utilities, future solar installation, stuff like that.
Great idea. Thank you. Okay, anything else? Okay. So the next one is the sports court update. So I'm going to hand this over to Chris.
Yeah. Well, still in communications with Mike Bruno, helping out on this project. What we've heard back from the county is that they're approving of the ADA compliant porta potty restroom requirement. We were just deciding on a location for it, probably the northwest corner of the lot. We'll have to lay a sidewalk path to the porta potty. And this porta potty will be close enough to the existing porta potty that's already there for the tie down area, so we can actually remove that porta potty and this one will take place. So a little bit of savings on that. In putting this porta potty there, we'll be maintaining the same number of parking spaces, but 3 in total may be reduced slightly in size and can be labeled for compact cars. That parking space is already pretty compact. We'll have to see what that looks like on paper. We've also been discussing fencing options for the sports court, specifically height. There's debate 4-foot, 6-foot, 8-foot fence. The original plans came with 8-foot fencing. Or even the possibility of no fencing at all. So we're just kind of going back to what do we want to do with that. The point was made that the courts will be 5 foot below the level of Upper Pacific, so a 4-foot fence would actually be subgrade driving by, but I would have to see it on paper too. Just some talk. So, other than that, we're still in back and forth with the county on permitting on our plans.
Okay, awesome. Any comment on this update?
Are we looking at any timeline on when we'll be able to go out for an RFP?
We don't have a specific timeline, but I would say within a couple months, I would say.
Okay, so we're going to move on to fundraising.
Have a comment?
Oh, no more. Yeah. Okay. So we'll move on to fundraising. This just says a recurring agenda item, so I don't.
It's on there. in case
Yeah.
Anybody has anything to say?
Yeah. I don't really have anything to add other than I wish Simi was here. I think you, as far as just, I think we do need some outreach to the businesses to see, with SCOPOA or the tourism folks, to help figure out some fundraising. I think a lot of these ideas that people have submitted, a lot of them are potentially more private projects for private enterprise, and if not private enterprise, but also really businesses should be involved in trying to help us fundraise for things, because it's helping their businesses, in my opinion.
And just a question, is there a way to fundraise for RID? If we wanted some of these projects to go through, can we do that?
Yes, I did speak with Jessica and Chris today, because I wanted clarification on whether or not we could receive donations. I don't know that I got a super clear, 100% clear answer on that. I know the fire department does accept donations. I wasn't sure if as a public utility, if we were allowed to do that.
We got that, our Seaway donated.
I know it has for the fire department, but I wasn't sure if the
There's
public.
no differentiation between the fire department and RID.
Okay. So we can have suggested donations on things, or we
There's
can.
stipulations for it. You could donate to a power source to get power off, like there are rules to it, but general donations. Somebody could purchase a bathroom for the sports court and not really be donating to the RID.
Okay, right. Okay.
And it's tax deductible?
Yep, ours was when we did the vote.
Okay.
Oh, awesome.
Okay, thank you for that. That was my biggest question, is like, I'm all for donations and receiving donations. I just wanted to make sure as a public agency that we were allowed to receive those. I think in the past I was told we weren't, but that could have just been misinformation.
We get donated land.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Okay.
Into a 50-50 raffle. Yeah. All right, awesome. Is there any public comment on the fundraising aspect? No? All right, awesome. So we're gonna go on to action items.
Keep it on there.
So let's start with approving the minutes from April 24th. As you all know, I cannot do this.
I would make a motion to approve the minutes for the April 24th committee town hall as presented.
I'll second that motion.
Minutes
No, we got to
Oh,
vote.
we have to
Gotta
roll
vote.
call, sorry. Roll call.
Wendy Ball.
Yes. Is that what we're saying?
Aye.
Jerry Jackson.
Aye.
Laura Ball. Aye. Tristan Sanders, absent. Amy Rajan, absent. Todd Davey, absent. Okay.
Motion carries. All right, so then we have airport fees recommendation to the board. How excited to see those two mailboxes down there, you guys. Yep.
I even took an envelope that I'm gonna put money into when I depart the other day.
I was gonna ask how much?
$5 per day. So. Which I don't know if you need any more thought on that, but I think that's appropriate. It's on the low end. I know there's a little thought in here about making it a donation, right? And that's weird. I've never seen that at any airport where they have a tie down fee as a donation. I mean, it's just expected you pay your $5 or whatever for your tie down fee. So just my thought is about the donation thing. I don't think we have to go there.
I think I was wondering about having a donation because, well, $5 seems really low to me. And I was thinking more of like a $10 or maybe a $20. Most people have like a 10. I don't think we did anything official, and we haven't done anything official from the district's board yet. And that's what this recommendation would be going. The next step is going to the board. I personally think $5 is too low, but I also understand that in other places where they have a higher amount, there is fuel offered and probably more amenities than we have. I just for the amount of, and then the other thing is I was wondering why we wouldn't have a landing fee, because we have more aircraft that just come in and out, and that might bring in more revenue than just than the overnight tie down fee.
Maybe I can address some of that. $5 is low. It's very common. I've seen a number of airports slowly creep it up to like $7. You always run into the issue: do you have correct change? $10 starts becoming high. I have seen $20 and $25 tie down fees, but they're usually airports that are like Catalina Island, or Santa Monica, that are they got staff there that you're paying for that collects the money, and it is a lot more overhead, I guess, and part of that money is going to the overhead. So I'd be apprehensive about. My thoughts is let's try $5, see how it goes. Now, relative to the landing fee versus overnight fee, again, you got to police it. And we can give it a shot and see what happens. The only places I've seen that have landing fees versus overnight, again, are Catalina Island, Santa Monica, places like that. And they have an infrastructure that supports it. So part of that's paying for that infrastructure. So my thought is let's just try the $5 thing, see what happens. Now, I haven't commented also on the residence sticker, which I also like, because I know Catalina allows that, where I bought a year's worth of landing fee for $100, and they issue you a number and you get a card. Mm-hmm. So $100 is, to me, kind of reasonable for a pilot to pay. I mean, if you think about it, that covers 20 overnights, and residents like me who do periodically use this airport, like I've explained, to get out here the next morning, that seems about reasonable. 20 times a year is probably about what I would be using it. So I would encourage that idea as well. A sticker for the residents, maybe $100 a year.
I guess I kind of see the same thing with the policing. I mean, either or, it's going to take policing either way, except for that we've already, and this is what kind of kept us from implementing this before, is that reason. It's like, oh, we don't have the staff to police it. And so it really is kind of more of an honor system. But yeah, I'm fine with just the tie down, but I would prefer landing fees, because our airport gets a lot of action during the summer, and I think that would, and if it was still honor, then it could potentially bring in more.
And I think we could implement both. I mean, like you said, it's an honor system. Why not? I mean, if we get an extra $5, great. Like, I even had a gentleman come into Jippo, and he's like, "Oh, I want to give this 20." He didn't want to give 5. I want to give 20, even though we didn't have a set price. So I think sometimes we'll get more than the 5, just based on change, and then also, just based on how much they want to donate over the amount. So I think I'd be down to do both. Why not? A $5 tie down, a $5 landing fee.
Sure, why not?
Yeah, why not give it a shot?
Give it a try.
Right?
Give it a try.
Yeah.
Do you want to put up the zone 2? Yeah. So these are the basic design ideas for the envelopes. That was the original idea of recommendation of just a $5 per night tie down fee. The words can be changed, or anything on the design can be changed. So I was hoping to get some feedback on this as well. If that looks like it's a good envelope, and then if we are gonna, I guess I want a formal recommendation from everybody on what we really want.
Well, again, feedback, Chris pointed out where they were when I asked, I guess it was a week ago or whatever. But yeah, it was easy to find once I knew what I was looking for, and I grabbed one, and it's pretty typical what I see at other airports. Nice job on the design, simple date, your N number. And again, the only thing we might want to try is the word tie down, have it just landing/tie down fee.
I would like to try that.
Yeah, because why not? And I might add, you might be a little bit skeptical, but pilots tend to be paranoid and want good karma. I've always paid my landing fees.
That's why I pay for my golf.
I
Same
also like
thing.
to suggest the donation too, the one at the
Cannot
bottom,
pay for golf.
because then that indicates they could get more if they wanted to.
So would anybody else like to see the suggested donations on there to stay on there? The option number 2, I guess.
I'm afraid they're going to blow it off then, quite frankly. It's going to have a reverse effect. Rather than they give us more than $5, they'll say, it's optional. That's what I'm afraid of. And if they, anyway.
I like the donation, but I am with, if we're doing both a potential $5 landing fee / tie down fee, then, and like Jerry said, the donation might just be weird.
We could say minimal donation, $5. But it doesn't, I mean,
Yeah,
it's not a huge
yeah,
deal to
yeah.
leave it on there. I think if people
Or-
want to give more, they will. But
Yeah.
I like putting in people's heads that they can give more.
But if we're looking at this as, I guess that's where it goes, like, is this a donation or is it a fee? And if we're looking at it as a fee, then it should be clarified as a fee. And if we keep, like, I think the compromise for myself would be that we are looking at doing a $5 fee, whether you're landing or
I
tying
think
up.
that's a good compromise.
So I would suggest removing the donation, and then we have public comment.
Okay. Oh, well, can we also talk about the local sticker idea as well? And if that's something we would like to recommend to the board as an option. Now, these designs are not necessarily ones that have to be utilized. I just checked out a couple of websites that offer stickers that are repositionable, because I assume that would be something you would want. I don't know if that's something a pilot would want. If it has to be, a sticker that is easy to remove or not. I don't know if that matters. Those cost a little bit more than just getting other stickers, but in general, it's going to cost anywhere from $100 to $150 to get 100 stickers. I didn't see any reason to put a year on there because I imagine the number of stickers we would sell would be minimal, and so we don't want 100 stickers that stay good for 2025. I think just the numbering system potentially would work well for that, and if we did so the next year, maybe the first year you're number 1, and next year you're number 4. Right.
I'm guessing you're only going to get like less than 5 of us that need these. I'd buy one, maybe 2 or 3 other people, but you're not going to get a huge number of these sold.
Maybe we should get like 50.
Yeah.
I like the blue one.
I agree. I like the blue and the green. Those are my choice.
Just saying.
But they look great. And Jerry, these are typical with what you see.
I don't see stickers for. Usually you're issued a card you put in
It's
your
just a
wallet.
card.
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, what,
Yeah.
But
whole other discussion, what do we want if we are
But-
going to present this as an
I like the idea of the sticker. It's kind of a status thing. I mean, look at it that way. Let's be proud of it. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want one in my car.
So typically you see cards.
Well, I'm thinking Catalina Island is they'll issue you a card when you go in.
in your window.
No, yeah, because again, they got the infrastructure. They got a guy sitting there in a tower that takes down your end number when you land, and you better go report it, or they're going to nail you. And Santa Monica's got they take a camera picture of you coming and landing. So, but those guys again, they charge a lot. And, I like the sticker idea. I really do. I think that's kind of cool.
So the recommendation, it would be to stick with the stickers. And I like the $100. You mentioned about $100.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I agree.
Your purchase will cover all the stickers anyway.
That's kind of what we said.
So we're already
Yeah,
breaking
that's
even.
right, making money.
And then making money on Trent.
Now, any public comment?
Yeah, also for your information, yesterday I pulled the envelopes until our ID board can, I guess, make a decision on what we want to charge or how we want to charge. I don't want to give any false information. The boxes are still there. Pilots can still throw money into the boxes.
Have you collected cash on the boxes? How much did you collect? Yay! And how about the golf course? Did you collect from the golf course too? Was there money in there?
There's $50 in the golf.
You're gonna get a whole week's worth from me here at the end of the week.
Just
love
for clarification and being on this topic, we'll be making an action on this on what to recommend to the board, right? That's what you're looking for today?
Yeah, after
Okay.
we go through the discussion, I would look for a motion for what we want to recommend to the board. Fantastic.
Yeah, so remember, really, this is a specific project. Also too, if we looked at a pass, like the golf course has a pass, and we look like an annual recreation pass that you can put in RID bill. Like I don't fly or land, but if it was an extra $50 a year and I get free golf, free pickleball, community center use, however we lay that out, like that's more strategic plan, large scale. Like I know my grandma would pay for a golf pass, even though she doesn't pay because her grandkids come out and golf. Right, so having that kind of option is like an all-encompassing thing. You might be able to pick a little bit more income off of than just a specific pilot pass or a landing pass. You can still do it, but also have that all-encompassing pass.
At some point, yeah.
That's a great idea.
That's a great idea, thank you.
Alright, Seth.
Yeah, I think $5 is really, really cheap. I'd like to see a minimum of 10. And as far as donations, just to stay away from gray areas, let's just have it 2 boxes. One that says donations for airport improvement, and then one that would have fees. If you're gonna go as low as 5, whatever. But yeah, I think if you had a donations thing, you would make way more than $5 per plane landing. I think. I don't have anything. And
That's actually a good idea.
If you did have that, I might say additional donation rather than just donation.
Right, for airport improvement. I like that.
or
idea.
have it on envelope,
Mhm.
something, give people the option.
Right. Maybe 2 different envelopes.
I don't see 2 envelopes, makes it
That
hard, but
might
a
be
checkbox, giving
Mhm.
them the ability.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that confuses?
I'll be honest with you, I'm kind of divided now about donation or not, That's why I'm willing to, let's launch the plane and see what happens, right? Kind of try something out.
So now we're going back to keeping the, perhaps a donation on.
Can we do a straw vote just among us? Do we like the idea of a donation or not? Rather than a formal vote? Because what I'm thinking is do a straw vote, see what we think about the donation idea, then fold that back into a formal motion.
My straw vote says $5 is mandatory, but also a line for additional if you would like.
I would be good with that.
I agree.
But what was yours?
Option for additional.
And I know this seems off topic or getting out of what the committee is here for. But as it was given to us, presented to us, and I think we'll probably revisit this at some point, is that the airport was under this part of the strategic plan, and that's why we're addressing it at this committee. Okay, so do we want to?
We want to talk about what we want to recommend to the board.
Yes.
One comment online, it says have a fee plus the option to donate.
Okay,
Yes.
Yeah,
kind of where
I
we're
agree.
going.
Thank you.
Okay, so what we're going to potentially recommend is a $5 land or tie down and landing fee,
You want me to
plus an additional donation.
float a motion here? See if it flies.
Unintended.
I make a motion that we adopt or suggest to the RID board that we do a $5 per night and / landing fee per aircraft with maybe an asterisk that says optional for additional donation. You can craft that probably better than I am right now. And then also along with that, have an annual sticker for $100 that provides for unlimited landing and tie downs. And I'm not going to say for residents, because it is kind of cool to have, a non-resident doing it too, just because they come here a lot.
I'll second that.
All right. Roll call.
Okay, let's, Laura Ball. Aye. Tesha Machine.
Aye.
Jerry Jackson.
Aye.
Wendy Ball. Aye. Amy Rajan. Absent. Todd Davis. Absent. Kristen Sanders. Absent. Okay, motion carries.
Okay, so we're almost finished here. So the next thing we have is the golf course maintenance schedule. Yeah.
Okay, I have a little write-up, golf links maintenance schedule. So just to provide some background, RID currently manages the golf links course, as opposed to a golf course. A links course is the oldest style of golf course, first developed in Scotland. Links courses tend to be on, or at least very near to a coast, and the term is typically associated with coastal courses. These courses are often amid dunes with barely any water hazards and few, if any, trees. This reflects both the nature of the scenery where the sport originated and the limited resources available to golf course architects at that time. Soil movement, for example, had to be done by hand and thus was kept to a minimum, as was irrigation. Even today, some links courses do not employ a green staff, use only basic machinery such as hole cutters without boards, resulting in a hole that is cut unevenly, and they also use grazing animals to keep the grass cropped. The unique nature of links courses necessitates a distinct style of play. The challenges links traits present fall into two categories. Topography, which tends to be characterized by uneven fairways, thick, rough, and small, deep, hot bunkers, and climatic, dominated by windy conditions created by their coastal location and lack of trees, and frequent intermittent rain squalls. Links topography favors a controlled style of golf as hazards abound. Low and even bouncing shots allow balls to be skipped onto greens rather than high flights landed with strong backspin. Windy or blustery weather also calls for low, accurate shots. Scenic conditions demand concentration and caution. As many traditional links courses consist of an outward 9 in one direction along the coast and an opposite inward 9 returning, players often must cope with contrasting wind patterns in each half of their round. So the recommendation here is to assign committee members to work with RID staff and produce an annual calendar for recommended golf links maintenance, which will include optimal date ranges to complete maintenance activities and dates of regular annual events on the golf links.
Okay, Wendy.
I think that sounds great, and I can't imagine this golf course used to have those pot bunkers. You can see them on 5, and a couple of probably was awesome back then, and they had a great idea. And it's a total links course. I wish we could put goats out there to maintain the fairways, and if we could, I would do it. Deer, goats. Well, I just wish I could put them on. I'd put them on 7. I'd put them on 2 and 3, and it would be awesome. But yeah, great idea. Sounds good.
Oh, yeah, I love the description of links. I didn't know all that stuff. That was really interesting. Thank you, Chris, for doing that.
Thanks for Scotland.
Yeah.
So the action here would be just having somebody on this committee work with Chris and I guess you, and or maybe the Parks and Rec employee, which would be, I think, Dylan at this point.
Yeah, Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I know Joe's more interested in golf. Personally, he might have better information.
Joe M?
But,
Is he a RID employee?
yes. But I'm not really sure. I just know that there's been conflicting information out there for, recommended maintenance, and I think it would be a good idea, and you would express community interest in regular maintenance, that if there was a good idea. I mean, obviously, I don't think the RID could commit to necessarily, doing things on time, but if it's on their radar that this is the proper time of year to do this type of activity with the golf course, and also to maybe, if they're not golfers, they don't know that the hangover tournament is coming up or the Irish Games is coming up, so they didn't spend any time. So if it's on like a annual calendar, I think that might be helpful to keep the maintenance activities on schedule or close to schedule.
And the course is great right now, you guys. The couple of weeks where everyone was complaining, Dylan was on vacation, and it's really not fair for us to complain when he was on vacation. The course is great now. Needs a little bit of, we'll get those tee boxes taken care of. But then we can have tournaments like Benbow, who they have a new owner down there, and they've had 2 tournaments in the last month, and there's 2 more next month, so they're really killing it. Turned a corner down there, and we can do that too as soon as we get our tee boxes. And there's money to be made in golf tournaments.
Nice. So is this something you would want to?
I would love to be on your committee, yeah.
Or just, it doesn't sound like we're having necessarily a subcommittee on this. It's not labeled as that. But would you like to be?
I would love to. I think Dylan's great. I like working with him. He totally wants to turn a corner on that course also, and I just think now is the time and we're going to do it.
Great. Well, then I would nominate Wendy if we were doing it. But yeah. Okay.
You probably want to prioritize these for budgeting purposes.
I'll go through this list, but yeah, we have a fair amount of volunteers who do want to help, and I think you guys have a band of weed whackers somewhere, and we just are chomping at the bit to get going. Yeah.
Public comment. Okay, but it sounds like Wendy's going to be our.
And we know money's an issue, but there's plenty of things that can be done that aren't expensive right now.
I'd like to hear that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Wendy, for volunteering for that.
Of course.
All right, so if there's no public comment, the 4th of July subcommittee, I vote that since we have kind of a lack of members here today, we maybe take that to the next meeting, because we'll need probably around like maybe 3 people for that subcommittee.
What exactly is the?
Obviously, I don't think it's going to be possible to really do anything for this year, but what we can do is plan strategically for next year's 4th of July and kind of come up with some ideas and budget around what we do with the drone fireworks situation or whatever, we think we can do to kind of help the community maybe prevent fires.
What is our off the cuff knee-jerk reaction to that drone pamphlet?
I love the drone idea. I mean, we did them in the Bay Area. They're awesome. It's great. It's environmentally friendly. We have a lot of eco-conscious people here, a lot of animal lovers. I mean, I think, and quite frankly, veterans too. It's not great for us humans either. But that being said, we also have some community members that I think are going to be hard to prevent them from doing that. So I think it's kind of what can we do to stay safe, but also set our expectations that there are still going to be fireworks and there is still going to be rowdiness. But how do we kind of come together as a community and figure out how we strategically plan for that?
I saw the cost and I was kind of shocked at that. Is that even something that's feasible for us?
If I could add to that, and this is kind of with this 4th of July subcommittee, what they would be tasked with is really doing outreach to the businesses and finding out what are they willing to help cover. Because typically in other areas, it's the Chamber of Commerce. There's other resources that we don't have, but we do have tourism associations here, and so it would really, in my opinion, I don't believe that the district should be absorbing this cost, but I think we need outreach to the tourism associations and to the businesses to find out what are they willing to contribute and how are they willing to help advertise and seeing what resources can be brought in so that it's not just on the district. I believe that the district does go above and beyond on the fire department side in that we provide a safe and sane, like a children's area fireworks show for the little for the kiddos and families and such. But in the future, we may not have the staff for that. Like if we have any major events happen during the 4th of July celebration, our fire department is going to be all hands on deck. So yeah, I think I know Nick, you've spoken to this and I hate to get you back up there, but I'm calling you up there again. Well, I'm calling you up to expand on that. And I know that you have a really nice little show for everybody and you've done your best to keep it contained. And I know you're willing to keep continuing that. But I would like to see the community and the businesses take more responsibility for what kind of celebrations we have out here.
100%. We actually passed a little bit on the 13th, so they help watch that safe and sane area, and then we station one apparatus there usually. But yeah, it changes. We were hoping that would be kind of the original catalyst to start moving away from the unorganized thing at the beach. And I do think we will, once we decide to commit via drones or whatever we do, a lot of places incorporate fireworks with drones, and there's going to be a phased out program eventually. Like I said, the cultural change. The culture is right now, there's generations of people that come to Shelter Cove for 4th of July to light off illegal fireworks. Our family did it growing up. Obviously that's changed since I'm a fire chief now, so my brothers go somewhere else. But there is a lot to be said to that as a family aspect where originally we were going to shut everything down, and then we realized we don't have an alternative to send people to. So the first alternative was getting the kids off the boat ramp, especially during the high tide years that everybody's on that little square of asphalt down there. So that's been a big success. I do think the cost is high, but I think if you break it down between all the businesses and other folks, but we have to show that that's going to bring in more tourism, right? We have to connect it with the roads and the airport, having EV charge. It's all a bigger, grand vision of what we're talking about in the strategic plan. Another option is going to the chambers and maybe moving the Bembo show out here. I know they have issues with getting their fire permits. If it's a red flag warning, they can't do their show. So there's other things that we have an environmental issue out here too, with it being close to the water. So there's always going to be something that's going to be going on with that, but that could be a different option originally. And then I think Mike Solari brought up a carnival at the same time, where we have vendors. You can't just do a drone show and people come out in droves. But if we turn it into something else, we already have our parade, we have the hotels and Airbnbs, hopefully fishing comes back one of these days. I think we can turn it into something that's a destination for people on the 4th of July. And then we will shut down fireworks. If we have a legit alternative and there's some time where people understand, hey, we're not going to put up with that, we can enforce it. Right now, we just don't have a safe alternative to do full enforcement. But that's our plan eventually, hopefully 5 years from now, that we won't accept illegal fireworks in Shelter Cove.
Thank you. And having it on as an action item, what the intention is to do a subcommittee, similar to the Greenbelt subcommittee, but that way it allows for 3 people to get together and help do outreach. And so it's not just these individuals and then having to come together at our once a month meeting. So my recommendation, I think that there are other committee members on here as well that it would be beneficial to have them have the opportunity to volunteer for that subcommittee that are related to the businesses. My suggestion for now is to table this for next month.
And I would also say too, not just the businesses, but also fundraising in general.
Yeah, I was going to point out that Scarf's been pretty successful raising funds through the business community. The Labyrinth is a great example of that. They made money off that. They sold it to the business community as an attraction. So it'd be nice to get a Scarf person on there, but I understand the tabling idea. I think I agree with you, Tasha.
Yeah. I say we save it for next meeting.
Any public comment on anything?
Okay.
I did have that, that information you sent over from that one company. Was there any interest in looking at that or any other examples of what that would look like, a drone show, fireworks / drone show? They actually have one example of both.
I think my question is, if, due to the expense of it, is this something that the district would have to go out for multiple bids?
Based on their quotes, yes, if we
It
were.
would. So, I mean, at this point, I think that the next steps would just be get our little subcommittee going and let them do further research
Yeah,
and then get it to the staff and.
and then we would probably go out and pitch this to the businesses, show them the examples, and come up with a donation amount. Yep. Okay.
And I kind of like the idea of making it a themed day. So
Agreed.
maybe drones as the final grand finale of whatever is going on.
Of a-
I thought live
carnival or-
music on the 4th of July would be awesome.
Yeah,
I don't
our
know
Battle of
where
the
to start.
Bands. Yeah.
But a day event.
Mm-hmm.
It might be worth looking into the bid, not actually running the fireworks at a drone show.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So we
Exactly.
just work- We can give them the airport, we could provide property, and we could provide fire rescue.
Exactly.
services, but I would lean away from
Yes.
the insurance on it.
Yeah, and that's part of what the little subcommittee would be looking into, is how that would all work.
Who would do that? The tourist group maybe?
Well, that's hopefully, but we need our little committee subgroup to go out and connect with them and sell it, yeah.
Okay.
Table till next month.
Table for next month.
Oh,
yeah.
Action items. Don't we have to complete the action item for number 3, which is the golf course maintenance schedule? And we were going to have, I mean, we started to get close to having that, but don't we need like a motion and then voting on it, all that, or not?
Yeah, we were just gonna have
Wendy volunteered for it, but I guess we could, just so that to make sure that it's on record that we're all on the same page. So can we go back? That would be unfinished
Sorry
business.
to be a.
No, that's fine.
No, thank you.
Perfect for unfinished business.
And I try to get
There we go.
sometimes.
There you go. So should we make a motion for number 3 that we
Wendy is our,
congratulate Wendy on her appointment to assist RID with developing a maintenance schedule? Okay, there's my motion.
I will second that motion.
Roll call.
Alright, Terry Jackson,
Aye.
Laura Ball,
Aye.
Wendy Ball.
Aye.
Ashley Sheet. Aye. Amy Rajan, absent. Jason Bennett, absent. Ron H. absent.
Okay, motion carries. Congratulations, Wendy.
Let's play golf.
Go get 'em. All right, so anything else for unfinished business? Anybody have anything? No?
It has to be on the, oh, go ahead.
Thought you were
I was
coming
gonna
up.
add, there's nothing on the agenda that actually refers to the strategic plan, so maybe next time we can add something on there that maybe says dates or checkpoints.
Yes, I agree.
Also, draft review.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, the only thing was the town hall survey
Yeah, so we
recap.
have.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you, Nick.
Okay, anyone else have any unfinished business? All right, okay, meeting is adjourned at 12:23. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next meeting will be June 26th at 10 a.m.